The Hamas terrorist attacks and Israel's response in Gaza has been very disturbing for us to see. How is this affecting our mental health and that of our children? Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Dr. David. Definitely will be a more somber note kind of video here and a longer one also, but there's a lot to talk about here, and I want to make sure that I do proper due diligence for all the aspects of what has been going on and how it's been affecting us and our children's society. You know, it's taken a toll on everybody, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about. Now, we're going to talk specifically about the ways that we can talk to our children, assess how we're doing, assess how we are doing ourselves, but also how to answer questions that may come up that can be rather difficult. And there's not going to be one right way. And that could differ by the child, by the age, the level of development, etc. But having an understanding of where a child is at, obviously a parent knows their child best and what they can and cannot handle in terms of visions that they may see on TV or just conversations as a whole. So of course, with everything that I always talk about when it comes to kids, of course I encourage parents, caregivers to use their instincts as to what is best. But here are some guides that may be helpful as we go. Now, as far as this, usually again, I realize that I can't be completely family friendly like I am with a lot of my videos because we're going to be talking about some rather disgusting and gruesome topics here, and there's some graphics involved in their graphic descriptions here because this is what we're seeing. And so also you might want to have your children out of the room if they typically would watch a video, a Dr. David video with you. This might be one that you want to view first before deciding whether you're okay to have a child see it. Okay. Now, of course, the recent Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel have horrified many people. To hear about just some of the gruesome details of what happened at the music festival, and to the elderly and to women and children and babies. It's not just a lot to take in, but it's almost like so brutal that it's almost like feeling like you may be watching a movie because these types of things don't usually happen in reality, but yet it has. Okay, so people are also seeing the visual images on the screens. They're hearing um, family members and loved ones discussing their loss or their hopelessness, etc. And again, that can be really, really challenging to see as well, not just videos but pictures as well. Okay, so also a lot of people, from after seeing everything that happened in Israel, of course, we're now seeing more about what's happening in Gaza. Okay, and obviously, when seeing buildings that have been destroyed, when seeing the consequences of when buildings get destroyed in terms of people, what one might consider collateral damage in time of war. That can be really, really difficult. Israel's hunting down Hamas. They're wanting to destroy Hamas. They're wanting to this evil terrorist group. And unfortunately, when they do hang out in civilian areas, there's going to be civilian losses, and it's terrible. I'm absolutely not celebrating that whatsoever, and quite the optimist. I realize that the majority of people in Gaza do not like Hamas. I talked about that already. That's not the way that they want to live their lives. They don't want to live under that authoritarian, almost like ISIS type of conditions, which is how Hamas has ruled, unlike the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which has a more open society there. And has also worked more with the Israeli government in trying to make things better. Although, again, not saying that the conditions in the West Bank are great, but certainly compared to how things have been in Gaza, there is a difference. Okay, but most of all, my heart does go out to all families who have lost loved ones, who have been directly impacted by what's been going on over there. It's terrible. Civilians, innocent people should never be killed. It's just not okay. All right, now also, I also want to say not just that, but it's also pretty horrifying to see that that a lot of these terrorist attacks that were done on Israel have been celebrated by certain people in the world, certain countries more than others, certain populations more than others. And again, I'm here to say that that type of terrorism, those types of brutality, should never be celebrated by anybody. We're talking still about the loss of human life. And for the matter, for the people who have the overwhelming majority of people who have lost their lives in the middle of their life in the last couple of weeks, they were innocent civilians. They were not fighters. They were not the terrorists. They were not the government. They were not the military. Okay. So as far as the sad things, and our children are hearing about bombings, right? Besides the graphic stuff that we've heard about that happened in Israel ahead of time. But let's face it, when you see gunfire happening and people being slaughtered, and talks about beheadings and parading naked people, or their bodies through the streets, elderly being abducted, and they're hearing and seeing this definitely has to have an impact on everybody, especially for what our children who may not have the cognitive or worldview to understand more about what's going on. And of course, just recognizing there's going to be more trauma and loss before this is over. And so it'd be nice to say, oh, that's what happened already, and we have to worry about that. But part of me wanting to make this video is with an understanding that this isn't the end. It's still probably towards the beginning of it all. Okay. Now, the information I'm going to share with you next was actually provided by my wife, Lydia Abrams, who is an LCSW social worker, counselor, who is also the school counselor at Hillel Academy, which is the Jewish day school here in Camp. And she had written a letter to the families, but this is also something that's been distributed to the wider community outside of the Jewish day school, because, of course, a lot of this stuff is relevant to our children, no matter what religion, school, or whatever people go to, because we're all witnessing it. Okay. So I do want to also do a shout out to her and thank her. She has written many articles about traumas that kids may be exposed to, whether it's personal or things on TV and etc. So this has been something that she has been on the forefront in talking about for many years, and I've learned a lot from her too. So thank you, Lydia. Appreciate it. Okay, so now, regardless of the level of direct connection that a person may have with Israel or the Middle East, learning about the attacks themselves obviously can result in a lot of different feelings: fear, sadness, anger, anxiety, grief, even guilt, survivor's guilt. Okay. And these are feelings that are to be expected by all of us. And it's okay. It's okay for us to experience it. Whenever we go through, stages of grief, we experiencing these things. So this is real. It's a happening to us. So it's okay for all of us to, both to tell our kids, but even for ourselves, it's okay for us to have these feelings right now. Obviously, if they're very severe, we should be talking with a mental health provider who can help us through this, or talking to our friends and family. But in terms of with our children in particular, okay, now it's important to really meet a child where they are at. Okay, they may have, first of all, different levels of development. Obviously, their ages could be different, but also you have a very mature 10-year-old and very immature 10-year-old, so their level of maturity can be really important. Also, may know how will they respond to troubling news. Like, we've been through hurricanes together, earthquakes we've seen before, such as what happened in Turkey last year. So, there is exposure to traumatic events happening all the time. And for that matter, the advice that we're talking about now can be used in those situations, not just specific to this particular conflict. Okay. But also, what is a child's access to social media and to news? Because that obviously can say things. Knowledge, and also, do they have any knowledge specifically of past terror attacks or wars? Because again, that could have shaped some of their beliefs already, even though, of course, each conflict is different. But of course, we don't live in a bubble. Kids don't live in a bubble, and it's not just what they may be seeing or hearing in our houses, but what they may be hearing and seeing in school, on the playground, school buses, etc. So there's lots of different directions that they may be getting info from, and so it's important for us to kind of be on top of this and what they're talking about. So, so when I talk about meeting a child, where it's like when you know what's best to approach to your kid, as I was saying, okay. Now, but also, it's important to tell your kid that it is safe to talk with you about this. Okay. It's okay to tell them we're going through some of these feelings and concerns and confusions as well. But also, it's okay to tell them, in fact, it's really good to tell them that there's no such thing as a right or wrong question, just like there's no such thing as a right or wrong answer when it comes to this, because of that individuality. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we approach different things based upon age groups. Okay. So for the pre-kindergarten and the elementary grades, okay, ask open-ended questions. Things such as, have you heard anything that was disturbing or confusing, something that may have bothered you today or this week that you've been hearing recently, maybe that you haven't heard before? And maybe the answer is no. And if you do a check-in with your kid, maybe they're just not getting exposed to the information, and that's great, and that's part of childhood innocence. But again, with social media and the way things are these days, it's harder to maintain that for especially longer periods of time. But also, especially for a young child, do not offer any information that they don't ask about or seem concerned about. Okay, this can be a don't ask, don't tell situation where we may know stuff, but no reason to bring things up if they're not concerned about it or they're not hearing about it. But you want to keep on checking with them periodically, because just because they haven't heard about it today doesn't mean they may not hear about it tomorrow. Okay. Now, also, some children may need more time to process what's going on. So they may have been exposed to something, and it may take several days or weeks or repeated exposure before they're able to clarify that they are disturbed, to be able to formulate a question that you may be able to answer. Okay. So, keep in mind that this does need to be something that is ongoing. Okay. Now, another thing relative to older children, okay, middle and high school, okay, you can be more direct in asking the questions, because they are the ones who are more likely to have heard something specifically. So, ask them, have they seen any information online about what's happening in Israel or in terms of the war? Have you heard any talk about it? You know, Again, let them know how you feel about it. It's okay to share your feelings. Of course, that's always a good opener when you're talking with an adolescent, is to kind of let them know first how you're feeling about something in a kind of open way, but in a way to let them know that it's safe to talk about it and that it's okay to have these types of feelings and questions. Okay, but then also, then you can go on to ask them, do you have any questions specifically about what's going on? And of course, it's really important to understand that news information is changing repeatedly. For instance, with what we heard about the hospital in Gaza that was blown up. Initially, the blame was being put on Israel. Now more information is coming out that it was actually an errant missile that was fired by Islamic Jihad. Now, there's going to be a lot more research about that. But obviously, blame originally was put squarely on Israel in the first stories that at least I saw. But then at the same time, more information is now coming out. U.S. intelligence and the U.S. government, the bipartisan Senate, U.S., have all concluded that this was not a bomb dropped by Israel. Now, again, United Nations, other people do more investigation. There's more to hear. But remember that the first time you hear a news story might not be actually what happened. Okay? Now, and I said checking with people. Now, coming back to this, so checking with the kids on a regular basis is important. But also answer any questions you have honestly and openly. And it's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. You could say, I don't know if I ever will have the answer to that. Or you may say, let me look into them more. Let me see if I can get a better answer for you. Okay. With an older kid, you may say, hey, maybe we should even research this together so that they're part of it, as opposed to just being told, because we know that especially adolescents like to be more interacted with as opposed to told things. Okay. Now, another really important thing is to validate and normalize their feelings. Okay. All feelings are okay here. Whether they feel sad, scary, angry, confused, or nothing at all, there is no wrong feeling. So just like there's no wrong question that they could ask, there's no wrong feeling either. Okay. And again, if you're feeling the same way, it's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling that same way about this. And again, also, all of our feelings could change, right? And our feelings may change differently than our kids. So just because we are seeing things the same way now, might not be again the way it is in the future. Now, allow your child the space and and just the safety of being able to approach you with any questions. Okay. And again, that's true for the following days, weeks, or months ahead. But there's always being up there. Anything you want to talk about today, honey? Anything anything of concerning with you? Again, open ended. Especially once you've gotten past, even with an adolescent, once you've gotten past the specific questions, it's okay in the future to ask them a little more open ended, because they probably know where you're coming from because you had the original conversation. Okay. Now, another really important thing is to look for extreme changes, like in behavior or moods, sleep, or appetite. That some things can occur after hearing about or seeing a traumatic event. And of course, if you are seeing any of those more troubling signs, talk to your pediatrician, talk to a mental health counselor. You want to really nip that in the bud, because people can spiral. Okay, that level of hopelessness, and we know that there could be situational depression and anxiety, but we know that for some people, if it's going on long term, or if there's PTSD because of what they're seeing or hearing, that could be a ongoing issue, and we want to kind of make sure that we're not getting into any kind of danger places with where their thoughts could go. Okay, now another thing that's really important is to remind your child that they are safe. Okay, many a child does not realize that the Middle East is almost halfway around the world. Okay. They might not hear about it. We see things on TV. You might think, of course, because of the protests and some of the things that are going on to local communities, there could be things. But obviously, unless you really, really are in a not safe environment, let your kid know that you're protecting them, that the police are there, the our community there, our friends, our family are all there to protect that child. Okay, and that we won't let anything happen to them. Okay, it's really important for them to have that solid base of comfort and safety. Okay, but first, even before going into any details, I would still validate their feelings first, so they know that we are hearing them. That's so important. Okay, but then talk about the different ways that they're safe and secure. We have an alarm on our house. We have a very quiet block, hopefully. There's resource officers at the school. There's security at the synagogue or church or other mosque or place of worship, etc. But also help your child identify people who they may be also comfortable talking to in case you're not there. A teacher, a school counselor, um, a member of again of a religious leader, etc., a community leader. There are lots of people that they can go to, but we need to also empower them to talk to people if we're not around. Okay, that's important. Okay, but also, so that type of reassurance can be really, really important. Okay, now also, it's really important to be limiting the media exposure. Troubling pictures, videos, information can cause anxiety, can cause stress, sadness, in adults as well as kids. And we've seen that already. But we are also now getting warnings that it is possible that Hamas is going to start live streaming and having videos available of execution of the hostages. So there could be something that just like pops up that they may see. Now, most social media platforms will have filters that if there's a particular video or topic that you don't want to see for yourself or for your kid, there are filters, may need to do a little Googling to figure this out. But, like you couldn't finding a video and then clicking it in such a way that where you can set a notification, don't show me things similar to this. So there is that. Of course, parents can use things that are filters that help them keep an eye on what their kids' social media content is, so they can see if they're watching anything or being exposed to anything that could be disturbing or that we're not comfortable having them see. And of course, that's true overall, but specifically to here. Okay. And of course, but if they're doing that, open that dialogue. Hey, obviously we shouldn't be sneaking around our kids. We should always tell them that we, as the parents, have responsibility. We see what you're doing on TV, but we're going to know what's happening in social media as well. So you don't want to be surprised like you're thinking, ha, I found you. You want to let them know if you do see something. Hey, remember when we talked about me being able to kind of like make sure that you're safe and seeing anything? I saw that you saw this particular video. Do you have anything you want to talk about? Do you have any questions about it? Any concerns? How does this make you feel? Okay. Now, the last part here also, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Okay. I know we all put our kids first. We put our spouses next. We tend to put ourselves like on the bottom of the concern poll, and that's not okay here. Okay. Our kids, first of all, they can feel our emotions. They can read our body language, tones of voice. So we shouldn't be trying to hide how we feel overly. Okay, because they're going to catch up on it, and they're going to be like, I don't feel like I'm getting a truthful response from my parents here, and we never want to have a child feel that way. Okay, so if you're struggling with your own with emotions yourself, again, talk to somebody, whether it's a professional, a friend, member of the clerigy, somebody that you can release it with, that you may be able to come up with other solutions with. Go for walks, meditate, engage in relaxation activities, go for swimming, write a journal, draw. That's another thing with young kids, having them be able to either write or draw things out, or play like play therapy, have them act them out their feelings using dolls or using houses or using anything. Soldiers, if they have little soldier sets, that's what you're into. So, but it's important that there's some level of release and explanation of what's going on. And also, most importantly, breathe. Okay. Remember to take your deep breaths, belly breathing, keeping our blood pressure low, doing what we can, is also really important for our own sake, for our own longevity. Okay, so I know we went a little longer than usual there, but again, there was a lot to unpack there. So, of course, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put it into the comment section down below. And of course, if you think that anybody can benefit from this, please share this link with people, because obviously I put this information out there to try and help as many people as possible. Hope you have a good day.